think we are up and rolling. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our 4th annual Indigenous Leader webinar. And today we have an exciting session with our very special guest, John Davey, with Robyn Bourgeois as our host. My name is Wright, and I'm the Dean of the Goodman School of Business, and it's my pleasure today to provide the land acknowledgement. As we start the celebration of tomorrow's National Indigenous Peoples Day, I invite you to truly focus upon our land and to focus upon this beautiful place that is known as Turtle Island. And so let's reflect on this beautiful place with which we live and think as well about the animals that call this place home. Reflect on the beauty of the, if you will, that flora and the fauna that we have and the plants that bring life and the joy to this land and bring the air for us to breathe. And I also invite you to reflect on the beauty of the sky, and especially today, it's an adventurous sky. But all the things in particular in Niagara, we had a very lightning-like sky last night that was lovely. But the power, if you will, of the universe through the sun and the moon and the stars. And as we bring those thoughts together, it is right to give our thanks and to honor the Indigenous people who have stewarded this precious land for generations. And as settlers, to recognize our agreed upon covenants, such as the dish with one spoon, that is about sharing and protecting this land in the spirit of friendship, respect, and peace. So with those thoughts in mind, I'd like to state Brock University acknowledges that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis and Inuit people, and acknowledging reminds us that the great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. Please allow me to introduce Dr. Robyn Bourgeois, laughing otter caring woman. And she is a mixed race Nihawa Iskwe Cree woman, whose Cree family comes from Treaty 8, which is in the Lesser Slave Lake area in Alberta. She is an associate professor in the Center for Women's Studies and Gender Studies at Brock University. And her scholarly work focuses on Indigenous feminism, violence against Indigenous women and girls, and Indigenous women's political activism and leadership. We are proud to currently have her as our Brock University's Vice-Provost of Indigenous Engagement. In addition to being an academic, Robyn is also an activist, an author, and an artist. And this year, with her team, brought the first powwow to Brock campus, and what an exciting day that truly was. Thank you, Robyn, for that. So please allow me to welcome Robyn and allow me to virtually hand you the talking stick.
Oh, Tanse, Kandanas Komitanoa. Thank you, Barry, for that wonderful introduction. It's so wonderful to have those little celebratory moments right now because of the importance of tomorrow and, you know, recognition of the really good work I think we're doing at Brock. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. It has been truly one of my prideful moments in my career as Vice Provost Indigenous Engagement to have launched in conjunction with Goodman the Indigenous Leader Speaker Series. When I stepped into the role, I didn't want us just to focus on the hard things that Indigenous people go through, which we have to do. I also wanted to celebrate Indigenous excellence. And for me, this was that opportunity. So I want to extend my thank you to Goodman. This is our 4th one. So that's really, really incredible. And I'm really excited tonight. I don't even know where to start with this. I'm going to say this. This decision of the leader to feature this year was easy. It was so easy. I have had the honor of being able to pick the leaders for the last 4 years, and we've had 3 women, and tonight we have our first male leader. And this leader, I just, every day I spend with him, every time I have a conversation with him, every time I learn about what he's been up to, I'm blown away. I think he embodies the spirit of Indigenous excellence. I think he has done incredible things that, you know, really, if you look at the trajectory of his life, it's phenomenal. And he's just a really great human being. So it is truly my honor to introduce to you our special guest for this evening, a Brock alumnus, also currently a member of our Board of Trustees. But I want us to welcome Jonathan Davey. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Robyn, I don't even know where to begin. No, thank you, Robyn, for the kind introduction. Barry, thank you for your kind words and your getting us started in a good way. I have so much gratitude to give to both of you and to Brock University, but if you're okay, I'm just going to introduce myself and give you a bit of a sense of who I am and where I'm coming from. So, Skano, John Davey Nigarso, Oshwegen Dewe Degon, Gayo Kono, Naiwe Kwanzoden. So, hi, I'm John Davey. I'm Haudenosaunee, a proud member of the Lower Cayuga, the Six Nations of the Grand River, which is heritage I share with my father. I'm also a husband and a father of 2 kids under the age of 4, which I'm very proud of both of them. During my days at work, I am currently the Chief of Staff to the President and CEO at Scotiabank. And before that, I led our Indigenous Financial Services unit for a number of years, and I'm a lawyer by trade. And something else that I'm passionate about that maybe we'll talk about is that I've been a captain in the Canadian Armed Forces for the last 15 years now in the primary reserve with the Queen's York Rangers 1st American Regiment. So since my time at Brock, I'm a very proud alumnus of Brock. I've tried to keep a busy schedule, but I've also tried to do things in a very good way and live by a principle that I was taught at a young age, which is that you honor your ancestors and you make things better for future generations. So to the people that came before me, I want to say, just express my gratitude for being in the position that I'm in right now, because without them, I wouldn't be anywhere. And looking at Barry right now, Barry was one of those people that took me as a young person and gave me a lot of values that I still keep with me to this day. And in addition to that, taught me a lot of things in the classroom that I get to put to work every day now when I work at Scotiabank. And so, Robyn, I'm just tremendously honored that you'd asked me to be here tonight to share a little bit of my story. But the truth is, it's not so much my story as it is a celebration of the people who have been able to help me and help others like me really try to aim high and achieve our full potential. And so I just want to say Brock was seminal in that for me, and whatever I can do to really give back to the university, or at least share my story or talk to any current students that might have been having similar stories to me when they were in undergrad. It's just an honor to do that. And Robyn, the other thing I want to do is thank you. I have the benefit of seeing Brock the way it was many years ago and seeing where it is now. And it's always been an inclusive place, especially to our relations. But you've made it not just inclusive, but you've celebrated the success and you've encouraged others to aim high and have great achievements. And some of the things that I'm seeing around campus, I mean, we talked about the first powwow that you've hosted through Goodman. I saw the Eagle staff standing tall on the graduation ceremony. I mean, these things happen with intention, right? And you're leading a lot of that intention and you're doing so in a good way. And I just say, Naiwen, thank you so much for what you do and how you do it. And thanks for setting such a great example for so many to follow.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. It's not always an easy job, but it's worth doing, right? I think that's the important part. So I'm thinking maybe we could start with your Brock experience. I think that's a really critical.
Sure.
I mean, your university career kind of set you up in life. So what was your experience at Brock like, and how did it contribute to where you are today?
It's a great question. I should start by saying, I was very trepidatious to leave home. So I grew up off reserve. I grew up in Hamilton. My father's from Six Nations. My mother's from Caledonia. And I grew up in a community where everyone knew that. So they knew that my father was Haudenosaunee, and they knew my mother was non-Indigenous. And I was accepted. I had a great childhood. I was, and still am, a part of a great community where I grew up, where my friends then are the same friends I have now. And So the idea of leaving that was kind of foreign to me. And I have two older brothers, and one of whom had left home a couple of years prior to go to university. And he said, listen, you'll learn more about yourself and you'll become a more complete person if you leave home. Because I was not looking to do that. And Brock felt like home when I visited the campus. It felt like a community I could be a part of. And I say that based on one visit. It's one of those things that's kind of innate. You can't really describe it. It just felt natural. But still, after I accepted and after I knew I was going to start at Brock in the fall, I was very nervous because I thought, well, I'm coming from a place where everybody knows who I am and accepts who I am. I was taught by my parents to be proud of my culture, be a proud Haudenosaunee person. Is that going to really translate? And I'll be honest with you too, like, you know, I'm going to get to the point of actually getting to Brock, but I think the precursor to it is very important to set the context. I was speaking with my father, and he said, listen, you know, I'm Haudenosaunee, your mother's not. You're not always going to match the expectation of what people will see when you talk about your heritage and you talk about being proud of your heritage. But you can't meet that curiosity with animosity. You have to welcome it. And so thinking that way when I came to Brock and I started to share who I was and where I came from, what my heritage was, I was just blown away by how accepting and how curious the students were, the faculty were, the staff were, and it came from a good place. People wanted to know more about me and they wanted to understand where I came from. And that, to me, when you talk about my experience at Brock, is one of the things that really set a pillar for me to go forward in life, saying, you know what, there's people out there that accept me for who I am. I was 18, 19 years old at the time. I had a lot of insecurities, as I think a lot of people do at that age. But I found a community that was willing to explore this idea that, you know, you can have a heritage that doesn't always match the definition that people are going to commonly associate with you, and there's nothing wrong with that. It should be celebrated, and you should stand tall and be proud of that. So that was just getting to Brock University in that, you know, initial first semester, first year. Stayed at Allen Earp residence. It was a brand new residence when I went there, and had the benefit too of going with one of my best friends. He ended up, his name's Jeff Dykeman. He's distinguished alumni. He asked me to tell you all that. He he graduated from sports management, but having him there was a great thing. And I'd be remiss not to mention him in talking about my Brock experience. But Brock to me was a place where as soon as I felt comfortable there, as soon as I knew I was accepted, I could get down to work, and I wanted to be a good student. I wanted to do right by my parents. And so going to class, you know, trying to be studious, knowing that there was no one there like my parents to say, you got to do your homework, you got to make sure that's assignments in on time, things like that. It really worked well because I had professors like Barry, people who made the learning environment engaging and fun, informative, but wasn't afraid to challenge students in a way that they would grow. And I certainly grew a lot at Brock in terms of just my critical thinking and my ability to look at problems in a different way and to work through problems as opposed to just point them out. So Brock to me was, from the standpoint of being accepted at community, was very important. From the education I received and the leaders that I got to meet through faculty and administration was very important. But there was a seminal event that happened when I was a freshman at Brock that did shape a big part of the person that I became, and that was in my freshman year, 9/11 happened. And so this is something that I've thought about a lot because in my mind, I heard the call to service, I heard the call to action, and I ignored it. And I had a very tough time with that because I was old enough to know what was happening. I was old enough to have a reaction to it. I was old enough to know and mature enough to know what I thought I should do, which was go and sign up and serve my country. And the fact that I didn't do it has been something that stuck with me for a while. So at Brock, I also learned about regret. I learned about, you know, times where you're faced with a difficult situation. Do you make the right decision? And you know, you can't live with regret in a way that you question every decision that you make. But that was one that I never thought I'd anticipate going through, you know, as a student or as a person, where this event happens and I'm a brand new student at a brand new place and I really like it here, and my first iterations of learning about what Brock is and being faced with something that's stuck with me for a long time. So it gives a bit of insight in terms of perhaps why I'm a reservist. But it's one of these things here that shaped me and was part of the context of me attending Brock. But I overall, I would say that, you know, Brock's probably had the most integral impact on me becoming a person, becoming a young adult and taking responsibility. And I'm just very grateful for the support that I received from faculty, students, and administrators throughout my time here, because, you know, when my 4 years was up, I didn't really want to leave. I was comfortable again, just like I had been before I left home.
And then you went on to law school. How did you get there?
How did I get there? That's well, I'm looking at, you know, you can't just blame me for that, Robyn, because Barry helped me out. He wrote some of those reference letters. Here's the truth. I had such a great experience at Brock. I knew I wanted to continue with my studies. I think that's the easiest way to put it. And I talked to family members about this, primarily in my third year. I thought, what is it that I want to do? And I remember talking to my dad, and I have an obligation to, you know, give back to the wider community, the wider Indigenous community, be a proud Haudenosaunee person and contribute, make things better for future generations. And to me, I thought, well, how could I do that? You know, I'm still learning about ways in which I can make my contribution. And so what I thought would be the best way for me to do that was to continue my studies. And I did so with the intent of wanting to repeal the Indian Act. I wanted to lead the charge to repeal the Indian Act. That was my real impetus for going to law school and wanting to become a lawyer. And so that's where the seed was planted, is how do I make a bigger contribution to my community? How can I make it so my community is proud of me? And how can I set a good example for others? And so law school was this kind of confluence of, well, it's more education, it's a discipline in and of itself, and it's something that our relations might actually benefit from. There was a big call for lawyers, and I remember it's interesting too, coming from Six Nations, where Roberta Jameson was the chief at the time, and she's the first ever female Indigenous lawyer called to the bar. And so there was that aspect too of just the pride in community, and knowing that I would be a part of something that was far bigger than I was, and that I'd seen someone before me do it. So that's where law school came to be. And that's where, you know, you start writing the LSAT, you start soliciting support from your professors to get reference letters. But it was with the intent that I'm going to make a bigger contribution to my community, and it's going to be through navigating the law.
And then you went on and you worked actually as a lawyer in the government, for the government of Canada. Can you tell us a little bit about that and that experience for you, particularly as an Indigenous person? Yes.
So at law school, I did not set out to be a government lawyer. In fact, after my first year, I went back to Six Nations and I worked for an organization out there that was having a tax issue, and it was actually involved in litigation with the federal government. And I remember coming back from that experience after my first year of law school and talking to Professor Shinamai, who was teaching the Indigenous law class at the time. And I was very much pro-community, pro-Indigenous, and anti-government. And he said something to me that sticks with me. He says, "You're never going to be a good lawyer." He says, "You're never going to be a good lawyer if you can't see both sides of an argument. You're coming back here and you're telling me all the things that are wrong with government. You got to look at it from their side. The best thing you can do is get experience working for the government, understanding the machinery of government, understanding the decision-making processes, understanding the legislation, regulations, and jurisprudence that go into making a decision or shape policy." And so the next summer I worked for the Attorney General of Ontario, which was a great experience. It was eye-opening for sure, and it was when the Ipperwash report was coming out, so it was definitely, there was a lot of eyes on what the report had to say and the reforms that could come from that. And I wasn't done there. I said, listen, a lot of this is federal in terms of jurisdiction over our relations, And so I did an internship in my final year. I attended Osgoode Hall, and I did an internship at Osgoode Hall where I went to, it was then called INAC, it's now Indigenous Services Canada, and I worked in the First Nation Land Management Directorate. And I think that experience really shaped me, because that directorate was removing 34 provisions of the Indian Act that related to land and the administration of land on reserve. And so there was a bit more room for creativity, a bit more room for autonomy of Indigenous decision making, and kind of got inspired by it. And then I could have stayed or gone back to the province, or I made the decision to go and work for the federal government. And again, it's a lot of this is based on conversations with my dad, but I could have gone back to community, I could have gone back to the province, I could have gone to the federal government. And my dad said something effective, well, what's the most difficult thing to do? And I said, well, probably working for the federal government. I'm still not too keen on those guys. And he's like, well, that's probably what you should do. And to me, that's where the magic is. The magic is where you don't want to go and what you don't want to do. I met some great people working at the Department of Justice. I worked in the Ontario Regional Office. I articled there, did my articles of clerkship, and then worked there for 9 years in the Aboriginal Law Division. Started out in the Indian Residential School team that adjudicated some of the out-of-court settlements, and moved into the advisory role, which was just advising on essentially legal matters that fell under the Indian Act or associated legislation. And in my final year, I was selected to go to Ottawa and be the special advisor to the Deputy Minister responsible for Aboriginal Affairs. So how did I end up with the federal government? It came from this idea of wanting to know why it is that the federal government acted the way that they did towards our relations, enacted policies and laws that were and still remain very restrictive, and to really drive this thesis of I want to repeal the Indian Act. And so it's, you know, I can talk more about that later, but that's how I got to government. And the truth is, Robyn, this is something where I learned being a Brock student, is that you have to be open-minded. You have to be able to have your mind and your perspective shaped. I got to government and I saw some great advocates there. Some people that really did care about our relations and really did care about the relationship between the Crown and Indigenous peoples. And I was inspired by that. And it was a little unanticipated, to be honest. But that's how I ended up working for government. You know, people have their opinion on that, and I welcome it. I think it's good to have some healthy dissent of people saying, listen, if you really want to support us, to support our relations and our peoples, that may not be the place to do it. And to me, I say, you know what, you gotta, not dissimilar to what I was told as a student, said, I was told I wasn't gonna be a good lawyer. You have to be able to see both sides or multiple perspectives, or else it's just going to be an impasse forever. So.
That actually was kind of the question I was thinking next is, you know, did you get flack from community for, you know, our communities can be challenging sometimes, and, you know, really, you know, even as an academic, I get that, right? So.
Sure. Yes, I did. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I can't believe it, or I'm upset about it. I think it was natural. It goes back to what my dad said, you know, you gotta welcome the curiosity, and you know, if somebody's saying, how could you, it's as similar as why are you? And so why are you working for government? You know, sometimes it just wasn't phrased that way. It's, how could you, or are you really supporting us by doing this? And to me, it's like, I have to accept that as a valid point. Like, there's different ways to go about fulfilling that commitment that I have to make things better for future generations, to contribute to the Indigenous community at large. I look at it though and say, you know, I didn't really want to do this at first either. Going back to, this was the more challenging thing. And now that I understand how some of the machinery works, it's not because I was covert, or now I'm trying to take all that and destroy anything. It's so that I can understand better just why decisions are made. And so when I was, you know, Robyn, if I'm being completely candid with you though, like where that was made for really difficult days was when I was talking with survivors, right? Residential school survivors. So that's a situation where, you know, the strength and resilience that I saw coming from the survivors that I was meeting with through a legal process, representing the government, I wouldn't want to see me either, right? And it's just the way it was set up, and I'm not indicting anybody by, you know, I'm not criticizing the process or saying anyone did anything wrong. I'm saying that's an incredibly difficult decision, but some of the longer days for me were people saying, well, are you really Indigenous? Are you really supporting us? Is this what you saw yourself doing? And the truth is that you do have to have some conviction and some belief in what you're doing is making a difference, and knowing that, if someone's saying that to you, they could be sitting across from somebody else if you're not there. So if you don't have that open mind and open heart, it could be more contentious. And I didn't want it to be that way. I'm saying this all from the perspective of, it's taken me years to reconcile and understand, why somebody would feel that way or say those things, or challenge me for making a decision about where to work. But, I think because of the people around me more so than myself, have had the wherewithal that you're going to have people that have different opinions, and you're going to have people that want to see things in a way that's most productive towards their interests too. And I'm not going to fault anybody if they're saying, listen, there's a better way to help our community. In fact, that's what I want to hear. If you don't want to see me sitting here, where should I be sitting, or what could I be doing to make this better? So I'm just trying to keep an open mind. But yeah, there's certainly some long days, but that's not unique to me.
That's a great answer. And I just want to say thank you for that, because I think there are a lot of Indigenous folks who end up in work situations where it may not seem logical to community, and yet they're doing what they think is best, and how to respond to that, I think, is, you've just shared some really good kind of feedback there for people who might be in that position. Now, before we dive into the next question, I just want to remind the audience, you are welcome to join the party. And if you have questions for John, please submit them through the chat, and I'll be happy to pose them. So please, you've got the chat open, please feel free. I want to take us in a new direction in a little bit, because all of a sudden you've had this incredible law career and you jump to being an executive with Scotiabank. How did that journey come to be?
Yeah, here's the thing. I came back from Ottawa really energized. I felt like being a lawyer in Ottawa in that special advisor position, I got to see not just what was happening in one province, I got to see what was happening coast to coast to coast. And when I say work with advocates, I mean work with people that really did things in a good way. And so I came back from that experience energized. And someone said to me that Scotiabank was looking for someone to lead their, and at the time it was called the Aboriginal Financial Services Group, and that they were looking for somebody that, like, they were welcoming people with legal backgrounds because they were having some difficulty with risk adjudication. The way I viewed it was, a lot of banks were able to provide capital and different cash management services to different Indigenous groups. And Scotiabank was looking at this through a different lens of, a risk adjudication lens, which focused more on the Indian Act and the constraints on the Indian Act. And in case anybody that's listening doesn't know, like, to give you an example, under Section 89 of the Indian Act, any asset that's domiciled on reserve can't be used as collateral. So if you think about, your house in a traditional mortgage, a car, anything, it can't be used to get further access to credit. And so risk in law became something where it's like, well, I'd be willing to see what they're looking for. And I wanted to know I want to know a lot about Scotiabank just as much as I think as they want to know about me. And I have to admit, from the time that I met them, it was this great exchange. It was an interview, like it was a full, I've talked about this before, it was a straight up interview, but I was asking them questions and they were asking me questions, and you could see that there was a nice knowledge exchange going on. They knew my deficiencies. They knew I hadn't worked in finance or in the financial industry. And they were struggling with trying to figure out how they could better serve Indigenous populations, which I really respected their approach to. And so it was kind of this idea of, well, if you want to invest in us, we'll invest in you. And it's been a great relationship. I mean, my mother cried when I said, listen, I'm going to not practice law for a bit. And that's the way I described it. And she's like, but you worked so hard. I've been through all the struggles with you. I've been there. I know what this means to you, and I know how difficult it was. And I said, yeah, but I think that I could have a greater impact in the community if I do this. I think a lot of legal issues I was seeing in the Indigenous Law Division at the Department of Justice were rooted in economic causes. I still feel that way. And so being able to hopefully have an impact working at Scotiabank and saying, you know, there's different ways to structure credit to get around Section 9 of the Indian Act. There's different revenue models that allow for unrestricted cash flows and different ways of managing deposits and wealth. I really was just chomping at the bit to put those into practice to see if they actually held water, and they actually worked. And a lot did, with help from many people within the bank. Some didn't, and that was never the focus. It was always just keep putting new ideas forward. You've got the autonomy to see what works, and we want products and services that are really going to benefit Indigenous populations exclusively. The approach to Scotiabank that I've really admired and really subscribed to is that it's a 90,000 person institution with a lot of resources. We need to adapt our resources to the needs of our customers, in this case, to the needs of the Indigenous populations, whether they be First Nation, Métis, or Inuit. It's not trying to make First Nation, Métis, Inuit nations, business, individuals, groups adapt to our practices. And so that's kind of what brought me to Scotiabank in terms of the discussion, which led to a position, which has led to me staying there. And then I got a call very recently, well, I say very recently, 6 months ago, I got a call from our president and CEO, Scott Thompson, who's just a great leader, someone who I really admire. And he said, would you like to join my office and work with me? And again, I saw it as this, similar to what brought me into Scotia in the first place, is this exchange of information where I was working in a very specialized business line. I mean, there's a lot to do in Indigenous financial services, but it is very specialized. And he says, listen, you gotta see the wider bank. You gotta see our treasury group. You gotta see our risk team more. You have to see, you know, finance and strategy in the different business lines, whether it be wealth or capital markets. You know, and that to me was this idea that you never stop learning and you never stop investing in ways of, you know, improving yourself. But at the same time, I get to work with a great leader within the bank, and that's Scott. And I just appreciated the approach, and went back to, you know, what my dad asked me all those years ago is, what's the more difficult thing to do? And I said, well, it's probably more difficult for me to go work in the CEO's office because there's so much I don't know. So that's guided me again. But that's how I ended up working at the bank and staying at the bank, and very proud to be here, and still get some of the same questions you asked about being a lawyer. Is, you know, how is it that you're helping us if you're working at a financial institution? But I certainly welcome that question, because I think there's a lot of things that I can point to that are moving in the right direction.
Now, I'm really lucky as someone who's kind of lived in Haudenosaunee territory and was married to somebody from the community. And I'm hearing, and I've heard this throughout you talking, there are references throughout to your culture. And I wonder if you could articulate for those of our viewers who may not be familiar, can you talk about how being Haudenosaunee, being from Lower Cayuga, has shaped you as a leader, and how it informs how you approach your role, whether it was a lawyer or, you know, in the bank? You know, what does that look like?
That's a great question, Robyn. It's a great question, because I think here's the truth. Like, I think about the two-row wampum. The first thing that comes to mind is the two-row wampum. So I don't have one to illustrate what I'm saying, but essentially two canoes traveling in parallel. The first one was the Haudenosaunee, and the other one was meant to represent the Dutch, but it could be the non-Indigenous populations. And I think about that in terms of, you know, where I come from, and you know, being of mixed Haudenosaunee and non-Indigenous. You know, there's this idea that in my household there was two canoes. You know, they were much more in sync and working together to raise three children. But it's this idea that there's harmony there. But there still needs to be shared understanding, and there still needs to be a bridge from time to time. I don't think, you know, when you think about that, the two-row wampum and what it represents, it is this idea of harmony and peace. And I want to see that more, and I want to be that change between, whether it's the federal government and our relations, or whether it's our relations in the financial industry. Just pretty much, how is it that I can understand and share that value of partnership and working together, and at the same time exemplify it? Like that to me, it was something where my parents said, you know, that curiosity that people have about who you are and where you come from, you can use it as a bridge to connect people that may not have seen, you know, or been exposed to Haudenosaunee culture before. Also too, and I'm just going to bring this up because I think it's an excellent example of bridging, is the Downey Wenjack Fund. You know, you look at Gord Downey, who people know the Tragically Hip and people love the Tragically Hip, and you know what Gord did to bring attention to what happened in residential schools, this idea of bridging. And so that to me is a group that I can't say enough good things about what they do to bring you know, education and knowledge towards what happened to ensure that never happens again. But I also see it as an example I'm trying to aspire to. I would say the other, something else, Robyn, that comes to mind, and I think it has more to do with the fact that my daughter's, she's about 3.5 now. And so she's starting to learn about her culture. And so teaching her about Haudenosaunee culture and how the 5, now 6 nations came together, this idea that, you know, Hiawatha took the 5 nations that were at war with each other and brought them together to say that we're stronger together than we are apart. And the idea that, you know, 1 arrow can be broken easily, but, you know, 5 arrows together is tough to break. And it was this idea that, again, to create peace and strength through collaboration. It's a bit lost on her right now because she's 3.5, but I'm working towards this idea of saying, listen, when you bring people together, you can be of different backgrounds, different perspectives, but you have to welcome how it is that you can work together. And just some of the traditions associated with the Longhouse too, where you've got families and clans living together. My Gayakono or Lower Cayuga heritage, I think it has a little bit to do with, I look at my father, who was born in the US and came to Canada. My wife is American. We met in the Cayuga lands, the Gayakoil lands above Cayuga Lake at Cornell University. And so to me, it's a special place. And Barry, I appreciate your acknowledgement, you know, about how we have to have respect for the lands and where they are and where they come from. To me, to be back on Gayakono lands and to meet my wife, the person that's most important to me, you know, it may not speak to the culture or the history, but it speaks to me as someone where, again, you want to feel rooted and you want to feel like you're your best self. And that's certainly how I felt when we met. And so being Lower Cayuga, being from Lower Cayuga, the distinction primarily is that Lower Cayuga is upstate New York, whereas Upper Cayuga is Ohsweken or in Southern Ontario. To the fact that I met my American wife on traditional Gayakono Lower Cayuga lands, and that my father is from the US, it just kind of created this circle to me that's meaningful. So I share that with my daughter. Again, she's not picking it up. It's going to be a little while before she understands just what it means to be from the Cayuga Nation and from the 6 nations of the Grand River. But these are values that I share with her. These are values that inform how I work. And it's about creating harmony, creating collaboration, and having a respect for your surroundings and where you come from. So that's the best way that I can describe how my Haudenosaunee cultures influenced my career and influenced the person that I am.
Well, I think I told you this once before too. You know, technically we're family because my kids are Lower Cayuga.
Which I love.
Right?
Robyn, we are family. We are family. Yeah, I love it. No, I love it. And this is the thing too, where my father is one of 10. So there's a lot of Davey and members of the Davey family that are out there. And so it's a beautiful thing to have those connections. I was back in the community not too long ago, and no one knows my first name because they just know I'm Dennis's son, because that's how I was introduced, because there's so many Davies. And my dad was a teacher. I'm very proud of this. My dad taught at JC Hill School, and he eventually became the principal near the end of his career. But he taught a lot of people that I'll meet now or that are of my vintage, or one of my uncles, my Uncle Dave. He taught as well. So they're always saying, you know, oh, Davey, you know, which Davey are you with? And I'm like, oh, Dennis. He's like, yeah, he was okay. He was okay. And it's just this funny thing of, you know, he taught at a middle school, and so you get to see kids at that age where they're growing up and coming into their own. But it's a beautiful sense of family and community, Robyn. I'm so grateful that you're a part of it and that your kids are a part of it too.
Thank you. You know what I heard, and maybe can reflect on this a bit, is you've said a few times in our discussion tonight, you've talked about the good mind coming together with a good heart and that openness. And for folks who are not familiar with Haudenosaunee teachings, that's really core. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that in relation to your approach to leadership.
Yeah, like I'll give it to you as I know it, Robyn. I mean, I'm not a knowledge keeper. And so it's one of these ideas that coming together with a good mind and a good heart is that, you set your intentions on a goal, sure, but you have to be good to the people around you. And you have to be, if you think about it, bringing people together in a circle, everyone is equal, and making sure that voices and perspectives are shared. And so to me, coming together with a good mind means setting your intention and going in there with the idea that your opinion can change, and that what needs to happen is not just what you think is right, but what you think is best for those around you, and what's best for the community, or what's best for the community of people that you're working with. And a good heart is to do things with kindness, and do things with kindness, and celebrate abundance when you have it, and share what you have. Like that to me is a good mind, and a good heart is this idea that, you're contributing to something that's bigger than you. And it's an excellent reminder too, because, I think about the times where I haven't acted that way, or I've been really set in my ways. And I'll share just a brief example with you out of a sense of humility, right? Where I didn't act with a good mind or a good heart. And we were trying to stand up this new product. It's called the First Nation Leasehold Financing product. I'm really proud of it, but it took a lot of collaboration within the bank. And there was a person I was working with, and we were constantly at odds. It was during COVID. It was all on screen. So, it got to the point where every time we were talking about it, we were arguing, and finally it kind of hit a fever pitch where we were just at complete opposite ends. And the call ends after a pretty, it wasn't a good call. And my Teams lights up, and it's him calling me. And I was thinking, oh, he wants to keep arguing, let's keep arguing. And so I turn it on, and he says, listen, we can't do that. We can't argue with one another. And he says, listen, maybe I'm being, a little unreasonable in this. Maybe you're being a little unreasonable with that. And I said, you know what, you're right. And it grounded me again right away. It's like, I got away from my values, where it's like, I wasn't being collaborative. I wasn't being open-minded. I wasn't going about things with an open mind and an open heart. And it turns out, he says, I apologize. I didn't sleep much last night. My little one was up. I said, how old's your little one? We have kids the same age, and we're the same age, and we're going through all this stuff together. And I'm like, thinking, this poor guy, I mean, he's going through everything I'm going through. If I had just taken it back to the principles that I was taught about how to be a good person and how to subscribe to my Haudenosaunee values, I would have saw that before, and I would have listened better, and I would have been more attentive to what he was saying. And the one thing that he said to me, which I think is good when you keep in mind, how do you do things with a good mind and a good heart? When you do face dissent, it's because the other person probably cares about the outcome just as much as you do. And so that to me is, okay, well, how is it that I can amplify their voice? How is it that I can share their perspective? Because, if they've got something to say that's going to help make this better, help make this outcome better for everybody, it behooves me to actually make sure that it's shared. So to me, open mind and open heart and doing things in a good way is this idea that you've never got all the answer. The people around you are there to contribute just as much as you are, and you have to share. And when you do have things that are in your favor, or when you do have abundance, you have to make sure that others have it too. You can't just keep it to yourself.
Thank you. Now I'm going to switch a little bit. We've got 3 leaders sitting at this table right now. We've got a dean, a vice provost, and we've got you. And I think we can agree that we love what we do, but there can be challenging times. So what advice do you have for other leaders who are going through challenging times? How do you address it? How do you take care of yourself in those moments? How do you keep going, even when you have those challenges?
Wow. Here's the thing that this is an answer that has served me well throughout my life, and I'm going to share it with you, Robyn. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you how I've tried to go through difficult times, and I can tell you what's worked and what hasn't, at least to my knowledge. I think in situations like this with a question like that, you only know your own experience, right? So for me, as I get older, I wasn't this way when I was younger. I try to be more, do things with more of a sense of humility. If things aren't going well or I'm failing, you have to be reflective and you have to be accountable and say, okay, well, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And that's a difficult thing to do. Like sometimes it's extraneous what's happening around you and you feel like, oh, it's just bad luck or everything's stacked up against me. But it's beneficial in those times too, just as much as it is in the good times when things don't necessarily go your way, to say, okay, what could I have done better? And so I've really tried to embrace that and be more humble. Being a reservist has been excellent in that regard because they demand, accountability is demanded. You can't, no one really cares. The great thing about the military is no one really cares where you come from.
Yeah.
No one cares how you feel. No one really cares too much about, what it is you're bringing to the situation. They care about, can you execute and can you be accountable? And to me, it's a very stark way to go about life, but at the same time, it teaches you these good core principles to say when things aren't going your way, look inward. Don't start pointing fingers. And the other thing is, I've learned this in a big way too, working at the bank and working with the Department of Justice. If you're the type of person when things go bad that you point fingers, no one's ever going to work around you properly. And so we just talked about bringing yourself with a good mind and a good heart into collaboration. If people are worried that you're going to point the finger and say, oh, that was your mistake or your fault, they're just going to conduct themselves in a way that covers their butt. And in a way that they can make sure that, you can't point the finger at them. And that's, first of all, you're not going to get very far. No one's really going to want to work with you. And it's not a fun environment. There's not that creativity or autonomy that was what drew me to the bank in the first place, right? So for me, when times are tough, be accountable as best you can. Do it with a sense of humility, and just try to be accountable. The other thing I will say though, Robyn, which has served me well, is get outside, get on the lands, like get away from it as best you can. Not to run away from it, not to hide from a challenge, but I like to run. I like to be out on the lands. I like to be, away. I live in Toronto, so I live on the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Haudenosaunee and the Chippewa and the Anishinaabe and the Wendat people. It's tough to do that sometimes, but whenever I can, it's this idea that, you can make yourself feel very small at times if you get outside, and that's a good thing. You never want to get too much inside your own head or your own experience, because then you miss what's going on around you. I think it's good to get outside, get grounded, get back to the land, and try to actually give back to the land too, and show your respect. So
fantastic. Yeah, I am with you. Oftentimes I'll be working and I'll be like I'll be stuck in a in a moment where you're like, and I'm frustrated, and I'll go sit outside. I just will step away that one moment, and then I get clarity, and then it's like, oh yeah, okay, we got this, right?
Yeah. No, the other thing too, and I'll just say this about tough times, Robyn, it's made me grateful for the people around me. So, offering tobacco to people to continue to exemplify the leadership that I subscribe to, because I know I've had the privilege of working with a lot of leaders now, and they're not exempt from bad times. So the idea that, if I'm going through something and maybe someone else has been through and they've set the example, or I know someone who's had a really tough time and they've still done so in a way that's been collaborative and welcoming, and they haven't been somebody to push people away or make people feel small. I've offered, probably not as much as I should, but I've offered tobacco to people to ask them to continue to lead the way that they are. Because to me, it's this idea that I need you to keep showing me and others the way, setting the example so that I know what to follow, so that if anybody's watching me, they don't see the missteps as much as they do see the good way to conduct myself. So that's the other thing I try to do too. And to me, when you set your intention, when you're about to give tobacco, it really does ground your thoughts in terms of what you're asking for, in my sense, in terms of like, what is it that I'm asking this person to do? I can ask them to continue to be a good leader, but asking someone to stand up for what's right and to advocate for people that, they've gone out of their way to advocate for, things like that. Recently, I've gifted tobacco to say, please keep doing that.
That's lovely. I love that. Now, we're grounded in Brock, and you talked about being an 18-year-old coming to Brock. And one of the things we're celebrating, of course, is that this past year, we had the highest enrollment ever of self-identified Indigenous students, some of whom may be watching today. We also have graduates who have just finished their degrees and are walking out into the world. And I want to give a little shout out because we had something exemplary happen in that we convocated 2 PhDs, Indigenous PhDs, which is significant because we are only 1.4% of us have PhDs. So for those students who are just coming in and for those who are just walking out, Indigenous students, what advice would you give them?
Oh, Robyn, first of all, congratulations to Brock. That is a testament to the environment, Robyn and Barry and many others that you've created to make it welcoming for our relations. And it's a beautiful thing. I'm not surprised. I'm just grateful. Mm-hmm. And Robyn, when you talk about, students who have received their PhD, I mean, thank you for setting that example, right? Like that's the thing where we need that North Star to follow. Mm-hmm. And you've done that. So, it's just like any success I have, it's not mine. I share it with the people that showed me the way, the Clint Davises of the world who were doing this job before I was doing it, or Dron Jameson who, really invented the things that I get to do now. So thank you for that. Advice is tricky because putting on my legal hat, you should never give advice. You should always let the client make the decision. I should just make recommendations. But I am going to say something. I am going to say something that has served me exceptionally well. And I've talked a lot about my dad here. Because before I went to come to Brock, he said, listen, if you have something of substance to say, you're always going to have an audience. So work hard in school. And it's like, I get a little bit emotional thinking about it just because it's one of these things where it's so true. And if you work hard in school, you might not see how it translates to being a person of substance or having people ask your opinion or want your views on things. But whether you're a new student coming to Brock or whether you're someone who's just graduated, I mean, substance will win out because there's a lot of things that, our relations and you and I, Robyn, can be upset about or look at and say, hey, that's really frustrating. And sometimes there's this inclination to want to shout in a crowded room, right? Mm-hmm. But, my dad from an early age said, like, listen, if you get the knowledge, you get the experience, and you have the ability to maybe put something on paper that's compelling or people can't really ignore or they have to address, I mean, that's so much more powerful than other ways of trying to get attention. Mm. And so to me, substance wins out. And that's something where my dad told that to me as an 18-year-old in our garage at home. And then I got to, as best I could, put it into practice at Brock. But it rang true because of people like Barry and so many other professors. If students had an opinion, they wanted to hear it. If students did their work and presented papers and did presentations, they were inquisitive and they wanted to know more. And so, I mean, it was really perpetuated at Brock, this idea that you have to be a person of substance, and the way to do that is commit to your studies and then go out into the world and get the experience that you think you need to make a positive contribution to your community, whether you're Indigenous or not. Like that to me is the advice I would give is really focus on, I've been a student, I was a student a lot as were both of you. There are those times where you just don't want to, right? Like you don't want to be provocative. You don't want to be insightful. You just want to be done. But it really benefits you in the long run if you put in that time and you show that dedication. And it also says a lot about you as a person and your character if you're willing to do that. I think people are more willing to listen, not just if you have a degree, but they know that you're giving up your time and your resources to do something that can be difficult in the academic sphere in order to make a wider contribution either within academia or outside of it. So if you have something of substance to say, you're always going to have an audience. I can't think of a more true statement that I was told.
I love that. So what's on the horizon for you? What is your future looking like? Is there anything you would like to share with us? I'm always curious because I don't know about you, but I'm always forward thinking and I'm thinking, what could I be doing as well? So I'm just curious, what's on the horizon for you?
Robyn, first thing that comes to mind is being a good dad. I mean, that's what I want. I love spending time with my kids. My daughter's of the age now where we can chat and have fun, and my son's 6 months, so he's rolling. That's the big milestone for him. But being a dad, being a good husband, that to me is important. Being a good Haudenosaunee person and setting a good example for others to follow. I think what's on the horizon for me, knowing how much I've benefited from people that have come before me, I think on the horizon, if you look a few years down the line, I want the people that I'm working with now to be replacing me and showing me how to do the things that I'm doing now better than I'm doing. That to me would be really successful if I can see, you know, some of our younger people who are coming up who are really talented, really smart, really committed, make a very positive contribution and do so in a way that, you know, teaches me a thing or two. I think that that's important. I will say that this is something where I'm proud of it. It's a good example of when you take, I would say, traditionally non-Indigenous resources, you put them towards something that's meant to benefit our relations. It's a teaser. It's Cedar Leaf Capital. It took a lot of years in the making, but what it is if it receives regulatory approval, it'll be the first Indigenous broker-dealer here in Canada, so the first securities dealer. But the reason I bring it up is not to promote it. That's not why I'm here to do that. I got to work with someone who I've really idolized over the years, and that's Clint Davis. He met with me when I was a student, and he was leading an Indigenous banking unit at another bank. And he said to me as a student, he said, "Listen, you can do this. You know, if you work hard, you can have this too. You can be in this position." And many years later, that was the case. And to be able to work with him on this, where it's something that's innovative, I'm still learning from him. But you know, you talk about the space that you take up, and I just want to show my gratitude to him and so many others like you, Barry, and you, Robyn. I'm only here by the grace and charity of others in terms of the willingness that they've had to invest in me and show me time. So I can talk about new initiatives, but I just want to say thank you to the two of you for putting this series on. I think it's excellent. I'm so honored to be a part of it. And thank you for what you've done for Brock. I mean, Brock is a beautiful place. It's been so important in my life, and I'm proud to still be a part of it as a trustee, but I'm even more grateful to see the work that you're doing and to have the opportunity to amplify the great work and the great people that you are, and just say thank you very much. So, Naiway.
Well, I'm going to respond in kind. Kidenas komiten is what we say in Cree. And it actually means quite literally, like the literal translation. People use it as thank you, but it means I'm grateful for you. And John, I'm so grateful that you were willing to do this with us today. I think, you know, one of the things we realize, and you know, you've talked so much about, you know, being, you know, the people that came before you. And I think there are students who are going to be able to see themselves in different spheres, whether it's law, whether it's in banks, whether it's whatever, because of you. And they're going to see you and know that it is possible for them. I think that's really important. And so just thank you. I think you are an exemplary alumnus. You have just, it's amazing. I just read your bio, and every day I'm blown away about the incredible things you've done. And you are so conscious of your connection to community and just so generous. And so I want to thank you for joining us. This has been, I can't even believe the hour has gone because this you has been incredible.
Well, Robyn,
I would just like to come in and thank you both. I've had such an incredibly enjoyable time listening to this conversation. And I know one of the things that we talk about in our leadership class, you know, Jonathan, when we were there, was always, what are those reflections? What do you take away? What are and in my case, I always tease everybody, what are the three things? But there were thousands of little things that take away. But the three big ones, you know, that really leapt up for me is, I really loved where you'd get from your father, John, that we talk about, go where things are difficult, right? And I think that's big because, and it really came through in your stories, because that's where you truly made a difference, right? And every chance that you had where it was a little bit, and it was difficult for you. I could hear some of the challenge in your voice when you were talking about some of those areas, but you made a difference, right? To go in there and think about repealing the Indian Act, and you know, amazing things to be able to do from that. I also loved, you know, the concept of acknowledging and celebrating our past, right? And to be able to where it comes in and how all of that's come together to make us who we are. But the part that I really enjoyed, and especially your youngins, right? When you're already starting to teach your 3.5-year-old darling daughter about what it means. And I think that's a message to me about we are all educators, right? And even though you come from a strong educated family, we are all educators, and it is our responsibility to make sure that we really truly do pass on that education. I think that's lovely. And then the other thing, when you really spoke about that one challenge in time, and then you were able to deal with that in the conversation about the good mind and the good heart, right? And I think that is such a powerful message for all of us to take away at all the time, because if we approach everything in our life with those in mind, then we truly are there. And there's no question in mind, you truly are a warrior. You have chosen to be able to do all the right things, and when things don't come easy, and to be able to move that forward. And so I want to thank you for your conversation today, but in particular, I also want to thank Robyn for her leadership here today. So we are now 4 marvelous stories that are talking about Indigenous leadership that we can celebrate, and our students celebrate, and we celebrate by having these stories up on our web pages. And this one, I'm really excited when you will be joining us for the generations to come, because we will have this historical record as we move forward. So again, from the bottom of my heart as well, thank you both for a wonderful day today.
Thank you, Barry. And I just want to say, I would not be where I am without you. I mean that sincerely. You're fantastic. You're simply one of the best educators I've ever had. And talking to you and talking to Robyn, I just want to say thank you. I'm so proud to be a Brock alumnus, and thank you both for the environment that you've helped create, along with many others. And thank you personally for, the benefits that I've received both personally and professionally because of your goodwill and the things that you've done for me to support me. So, Naiwa, thank you both.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to both of you as well. And I want to say Kenenas Kametanao out to our audience. Thank you for joining us. We have now completed a full cycle. If we follow our medicine wheel, we have done our 4 rounds, and I look forward to our next journey around the wheel. So thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a lovely evening.